You're listening to The Sports Memory, part of the Sports Moments and Memories podcast with Craig Olson. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a sports memory. One of our sponsors is Pemberton Law Firm. They serve you from locations in Fergus Falls, Wadena, Alexandria, Detroit Lakes, and online at pemlaw.com. Pemberton Law carries a legacy of trustworthy and reputable legal representation dating back to 1883. Also making this podcast possible is Lake Area Docks and Lifts. They offer premium waterfront equipment sales, service, and installation. Best quality and service at the best prices. Just ask your neighbor at the lake. That's Lake Area Docks and Lifts.
When Brad Bergstrom was on the scene, it was, probably the most successful stretch of Otter boys hockey in the history of the program, because Brad, in his 6 years as head coach, got his teams to state 6 years in a row. And we're fortunate that Brad is here with us to reminisce a little bit about that. Welcome back to Fergus Falls.
Thank you, Craig. Happy to be here and happy to be able to be in the rink and get a tour from you. It's first time that in the new rink, so happy to be here and happy to be talking with you.
Well, you were here, as I said, in some pretty good years of hockey, and I guess the place to start is, how did you wind up in Fergus Falls in that position?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I started my coaching career out in North Dakota. I coached at Fargo Shanley for a year, and then I was for 7 years. I coached in a little tiny school up on the Minnesota-Ontario border, smallest school in the state of Minnesota to have high school hockey. 1 year we had 9 players and 1 goaltender. We called ourselves the Iron Nine, and learned a lot about coaching. Not very successful in the win column, but really learned a lot about coaching. And then I had applied actually for the head coaching job in Bemidji, and they offered me the job, but they didn't have a teaching job. And I just said, you need to move on and find somebody. If there's no teaching job, I can't be there. And then the opening came in Fergus Falls, and Don Kostelecki gave me a call, and because he had talked to the people in Bemidji, and we had some conversations, and I came here in the fall of 1996 and teaching, and then fortunate enough to be the boys hockey coach as well.
Well, there are a lot of coaches who have coached for many years and have never tasted state tournament experience, or maybe once, that one time, that elusive state tournament trip. I mean, in your wildest dreams, Brad, did you ever see going to state 6 times in a row?
No, not in my wildest dreams. When I got into coaching, my goal was one time I'd like to be able to take a team to the state tournament. And one of the things that I loved over the years about coaching high school hockey is on any night, anybody can win. And year after year, you can look at playoffs and there's upsets and things that happen. And I think the thing that is really satisfying in that 6-year run, amongst many things, great kids, great families, hard work, lots of good memories, is we went undefeated in section play. And, making it to the state tournament was great, and that was always a goal. But we didn't get upset. We didn't lose a game in a section playoff. And interestingly, when I was coaching at Indus, I never won a game in a section tournament. So I went from losing 7 in a row to winning 18 games in a row in the section tournament. And that's something that is really a tribute to the boys and the hard work that they put in over the years.
And there's nothing like success to breed success. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure members of the first state tournament team who came back the next year, the younger players fed off them, and that experience helped you that year, and then the same thing the following year. And it just kind of became something the Otters did. The expectations rise, don't they?
They do. And what winds up happening, too, is when you get into the section play and you start in the quarterfinals and there's a little bit of pressure, and then you get to the semis and there's a little bit more. And what I found was happening is because we had skilled kids, knew what to do, had been there before, there's not those nerves, and there's not, you didn't have to wait for things to get started. The kids just knew what to do, and that builds off of it. And pretty soon it's, I don't want to be part of the team that ends that. Mm-hmm. And so that momentum kept us going. And I think the other thing that really separated us out from a lot of the teams in our section is that we continued to play a very challenging schedule. We played with the Rozos, the Warroads, the Moorheads, the East Grand Forks, Bemidji's. We played some of the schools, prep schools in the cities. We played Breck, we played Blake. Mm-hmm. And we did that because we wanted to play the best competition. So I think great kids, worked hard, tough, challenging schedule, and then knowing what to expect and then not wanting to be that team that ends it. I think that was a blend that helped us to continue to be very successful.
Yeah, it is a fun run for the fans too, and I know you had a lot of fans in the community who supported your team, and the student body I know is really excited, and that's always a fun part of a small town, and we're not a real small town, you know, but small relatively speaking. The whole community feels that success and gets behind you.
You know, I remember going into the section tournaments. They were always at the Runestone Arena in Alexandria, and to see all the Otter fans that were there was just incredible. And then we get down to the state tournament, and whether it was at the Civic Center or it was at the Target Center or at the XL Energy Center, whenever we played, it was great to see all of the Otter fans there, and they supported us, and I know the boys appreciated that too, because there's nothing like hitting the ice, whether court or field or whatever, and knowing that you've got your fans there supporting you. And yes, my time here, they supported us very well, and that was always appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of go back and talk some of the kids and the years, because you had some great success. Third place finish in the state was the highest one of your teams had, and you started your first year, you finished fourth in the state. So what can you tell us about the early years, the first couple of years, and what you recall about those teams and what made them so special? Yeah,
so my first year here, I'll start there, 96, 97. You know, we had a really good returning nucleus of players. I had our first line, Jared Thacker, Nick Wynn, and Ryan Jensen, and they were just go-getters. You know, they had been there, and they were a little burr under their saddle because they had lost to Detroit Lakes in the section final. It might have double overtime, I think.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And they were laser focused on wanting to make sure that we got back. I had a second line, the young kids, right? Josh Anderson was a freshman. Aaron Olson and Rob Meister were sophomores. And they had been playing together in youth hockey for so many years, and they just knew each other very, very well. And then I think about our defensemen. We had Justin Haas and Aaron Gebford. In fact, I just ran into Aaron the other day. His son plays for the Otters, and they were playing where I'm school superintendent. And so last couple of years, I've made sure I've been supervising those games so I could see Aaron. It was great to catch up to him. But, you know, we called them Bump and Thump, Justin and Aaron, and they played hard. I remember Nick Letcher. I remember Ben Shaw was a sophomore at that time. And, you know, we had a really nice team, and we were playing very well. And that was the year, that spring, when the Red River Valley flooded.
Oh, yes.
And we had such a challenge because we would have a practice and then not practice for 2-3 days because of the weather. And it was just this stop and start, constant, just couldn't have some consistency. But I really think about Justin, and I think about Nick and Jared and Ryan. They were kind of the anchors. And then a goaltender, John Lill. I just love John. He was the kind of goaltender that, as a former goalie myself, I loved, because he would play the puck and he would help us. He was like a third defenseman out there sometimes. And then he got really hot at the end of the season, and he carried us through some tough games at the end of the year. And then when we were in the state tournament, John played exceptionally well. When we played Red Wing in the state semifinals that year, it was John that made about 3 saves that I remember that were just incredible, and it's why we were only down 2-1 after 2 periods and really challenging them. But that was just a really fun team that liked being together. And they came to practice every day. They worked hard, and they had a mission, and that mission was they wanted to win that section championship. And when we beat Little Falls in the section final, I just remember the smile on Jared Thacker and Nick Wynn's face. Ryan Jensen was always just kind of stoic, but Nick and Jared had a smile that I've never forgotten, and they were so happy that we had won that section championship, and then we were off to the state tournament, which we were excited to do as well. So that was a great first year for me.
The second year you got back to state, but didn't play well at state. Got beat a couple of times down there. But in the talking to the guys who were on the third place team the third year in 98, 99, they talked about how that was really a motivator for them between those two seasons to get back to state. Did you have that same motivation or sense that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they really wanted to. We got down there and we had a practice, and not many people know this. But then we would always go and get our skates sharpened, and then you'd go and you'd play the game. Somehow when our skates got sharpened, about half the team could hardly make a turn and stop. So we played a really good Hermantown team, but we certainly did not have our full potential to be able to play like we could have. But what it did is it really aggravated that group of sophomores and juniors from that 98-99 team that really felt like they got the short end of the stick, so they wanted to go back and prove that what happened in 98-99 was a fluke, and that they had that burr under their saddle all year long from that point forward. And it was interesting when we lost the second game. I think we played Rochester Lords, and after the game was over, I gave all the seniors a hug, and we talked a little bit about the time that we've been together and those pieces. But what I remember is the juniors and sophomores, they were angry. And not that that the season was over, they were mad at how it ended. Mm-hmm. And I think that served to motivate that group when we came to the 98-99 season for sure.
The finish to the 97-98 season left a bitter taste in the mouths of the Otter hockey players, and Captain Aaron Olson said that served as motivation heading into 98-99.
We were successful the previous year and the year before that too, and just getting the state tournament wasn't our goal. It was our ultimate goal was trying to win the whole thing, and we got pretty close. We did work pretty hard in that off season. We had a goalie come in. Kevin Ackely came back. That was a huge help for us, and we knew that it was something special that year, and it was a remarkable, so fun. It was a fun run.
Josh Anderson agreed that there was a lot of motivation going into that third place season.
I mean, I think, you got everybody individually, I think, was motivated in a different way. I don't think it was hard to motivate that group. We were a pretty driven group of players and athletes, at a lot of different sports. And I think, we always wanted to win. You grow up wanting to, go to the state tournament in Minnesota. It's huge. It's like Texas football, right? And I think, that alone, just wanting to get on the big stage and kind of, you have a little bit of an edge. There's a lot of teams that, from the cities and bigger schools and this or that. And obviously we were in the Class A tournament, but we always felt like we had a little something to prove. I don't think a whole lot of people talked about us, and we always had a little chip. So we wanted a good showing. At the end of the day, we wanted to win the whole thing. But I guess that didn't quite work out, but third felt pretty good.
Well, 98-99, Kevin Ackely came back for his senior year in goal, which obviously was a key. But you took care of business against Little Falls to get down to state. But that team just had that extra special ingredient, I think, with Kevin.
Yeah, he did. And I've talked a lot about over the years that I think that the key to being successful, if you're going to make that run into the playoffs, is you have to play well in your own end, and it starts in the crease. And Kevin coming back for his senior year, they did two things. Number one is it really excited the whole team because Kevin, as he proved after he got done playing high school hockey, was a talented goaltender, Division I quality goaltender, and was on his way maybe to beyond that until he got hurt. But so the one thing it did is it really excited the kids. And then number two is it brought back that group that had played together in youth hockey all those years. And now the friends are together, that group that played in Pee-wees and in Bantams, they're now back together. And with that, then it was just, okay, now we've got that last piece that we really wanted to have. And they were set and ready to go. And it just proved to be throughout the course of the year their skill level, their talent, and the willingness to play for each other that really helped us to have a very successful season.
Well, Brad Bergstrom and the teammates of Kevin Ackely knew how important his return was to the lineup his senior season, and Kevin talked about the decision to return to Fergus Falls for that final high school year.
You know, it's more family than anything. My dad had some health issues, so certainly be able to come back and help around the house more. And then the added benefit of just coming back and being around with all my buddies. And that's what I always thought was the coolest thing was those guys were disappointed that I moved away, but they were always my buddies. And they welcomed me back with open arms, and that was the coolest thing.
Josh Anderson was the leading scorer on that team, and he talked about what he thinks made this team so good.
We grew up together. You know, we played together, you know, pretty much mites on up together. You know, we grew up on the outdoor rink together and, you know, essentially doing everything together. You know, a lot of different sports, not only hockey, but we played baseball, and a lot of the guys played football together. And so, you know, I think, you know, we were a close-knit group. You know, we worked hard for one another. You know, nothing ever comes easy. You know, third place is great. I'd like to say it was first. But you know, I think just the culture we had, and you know, we're still a fairly close-knit group. You know, we get together. You know, a few years back, we had a little anniversary game against the Wounded Warriors, and it was great to see everybody and kind of talk about the old times and lace the skates up. It was interesting. It was fun to watch. You know, it was like a lot of us never missed a beat. Obviously, we were a few steps slower and a little older, but you know, as far as moving the puck around and stuff, it felt pretty natural.
You spent the majority of your time that year on the same line with Aaron Olson and Rob Meister. What made you guys click as a line? Why were you effective?
We played a lot together growing up. You know, I was fortunate to be able to play with Rob and Aaron, both really, really great players. You know, Rob was, you know, a bigger body, good skater, could see the ice well. Aaron, you know, a great scorer, could really shoot the puck. You know, we kind of knew where one another was. You know, I knew, you know, if Aaron or Rob got the puck on the wall, I could take off, and they knew where I was going to be, and I think they knew that, you know, I kind of knew where they were going to be, and you know, we all had, our games were all a little different, but they, you know, when you put it all together, it was a pretty effective line.
That state tournament, Brad, you played at such a high level. You ran into some tough competition, which you always run into at state, but just the guys really were on their game.
They were. You know, that first game, and it was at Target Center, and I don't know if very many people remember that, but that's when they tore down the Civic Center and were building the XL. And so the first game, what I remember is we came off the ice after warm-ups, and Kevin Garnett walked by, and you know, you hear how tall he is, and I'm not the tallest person in the world, right? But I had to look a long ways up to see him. But we played Red Wing in that first game, and they were ranked pretty high in the state. And I think part of that team for the boys is that there was just not a lot of respect for the schedule that we played, the talent on the team, and you know, we were kind of an afterthought as people were talking about the state Class A tournament. And that was good motivation. I know as a coach, I used that to motivate the boys a little bit with regards to, you know, there's just not an awful lot of respect. Almost the Rodney Dangerfields. I'm dating myself a little bit here, but Rodney Dangerfields of Class A hockey. But we played Red Wing, very good team. I got to know George Nemenich from my days back in when we knocked heads in the semifinals in 96-97. And we played a really fundamentally sound game, and we beat Red Wing, and that was a big lift for the boys because we had lost both games the year before, And so to beat Red Wing was really a feather in our hat, and it turned some heads, that's for sure. And it again boosted up our confidence. And then I told the boys that's why we play the Moorheads, the Warroads, the Rozos. We play those so when we get here, it's not something that's it's a foreign subject for us. And I couldn't have been more happy with how they played.
Well, and winning that first game means you're playing 3 games down to state, and that's always a goal. You want to get down there and play 3 times. You don't want to lose 2 like you did the year before.
Correct.
So the motivation worked for them, but then you ran into Benilde St. Margaret's. They were an outstanding team.
Yeah, they were. And they had a Division I goaltender. I think they had 4 or 5 Division I forwards, 2 Division I defensemen. They had players that were on their 3rd and 4th line that played Division III hockey. So just a really good team. My regret that I have through that whole season is that when we were playing Benilde, I couldn't come up with a strategy for us to use to try and come back because they kept coming at us. They had speed. That was the thing. We were quick, but they had speed. And I couldn't come up with a strategy. We tried a few things, but they kept coming at us in waves. But that game, what I do remember is what I call probably the check of not only the year, but probably of the century. And one of the things that we taught our defensemen to do is if you're the weak side defenseman, so if the puck's on the opposite side of you, you're the weak side, you get to our blue line, that's the line of demarcation. You do not go across that line without there being some sort of a penalty that's going to happen to you. And Ben Shaw slid across and he hit Jake Riddle. And that's the hardest hit I have ever seen in my life. And Ben did that all the time. So it was nothing new for us to see, right? It was the only time I saw Ben Shaw go down on a knee after the hit. And I ran into Tom Reed, who was doing the color commentary for that game. And he said, "Coach, that's the hardest hit I've ever seen in my life." I said, "It was." And then I ran into Mr. Reed a number of years ago, and he still remembered that hit. But what was hard for the boys is they had worked hard all year. We ran into that buzzsaw of Benilde St. Margaret, and it was just the emotional drain that it took on them. I was concerned about how are we going to be ready, and are we going to be ready to go on the next day for the 3rd place game. But certainly an emotional letdown. But at the same time, the boys worked real hard and it was just on that day they were better than us. And sometimes you got to tip your hat to them.
Now, that game against Blake for 3rd place, it is a hard one to get ready to play for both sides. And I guess, you try as a coach to say, hey, only 3 teams in our class are going to end the season on a win. You can be one of them, and you'd be the 3rd best team in the state. There's a lot of motivation there, but the reality is, hey, we wanted to be playing for the championship.
Absolutely. You wanted to play on Saturday at 2 o'clock. That's the game that you wanted to play. That's what you looked forward to all year. And then to be that close and have it end. And then for the boys also that, it wasn't a 4-2 game or a 3-1 game. It was, they kind of handed it to us a little bit. And so there was that, all that emotion that goes with that. And not surprisingly, came the next day and they were ready to go to work. And Blake had a very, very nice hockey team. And I think it was 5-3, if my memory serves me correct. And watching the boys get those medals put around their necks and getting that 3rd place trophy, not what they wanted, but to your point, one of 3 teams in Class A, they're going to end the year with a win, and we happen to be one of those. And so it was a nice way for those seniors to go out, a nice way for the underclassmen to work hard for those seniors. And so at the end of the day, it was a win for us, and greatly, and I was very proud of the boys.
For Aaron Olson, it was a sweet win over Red Wing in the state quarterfinals, and he has memories of the rest of the state tournament, which are mixed memories, of course. The tough 2nd round loss, but the satisfying 3rd place victory.
Yeah, there's quite a few of us that played on that team as sophomores. So it was fun to, beat them that first game of state. And, they had Johnny Pohl that year when we were sophomores, and his little brother, which I guess wasn't little, he was a big guy back then, Mark Pohl. Was a solid player, played D1 as well. But it was fun to get that win, and, then we ran into a even bigger team. So
Yeah, Benilde St. Margaret's, boy, they had a nice team, and they really played well against the Otters, and I know it was a disappointing day, a 6-0 loss for you, but you guys were pretty resilient. You came back strong in that third-place game, and that's not an easy game to get ready for, is it?
No, it's not. And, losing 6-0, and Ackely, I think, it seemed like about 100 saves that game. It was crazy. Just playing that team, it was playing like a double-A team. Now, I'm down in the cities now, and I see Benilde playing as a double-A team, and they should have been a double-A team back then. They were so good. But you're right, going to the third-place game, and, people put their heads down, and they just want to move on. And, mostly our seniors. We had a big group of seniors, and we wanted to go out with a win. There's only a couple teams that get to end their season with a win, and that was our goal, that day.
There are only 2 players in Otter hockey history who have participated in 4 state tournaments. One of them, Josh Anderson, the other, Ryan Miller. Josh talks about being involved in 4 state tournaments.
No, yeah, that was a special time. There was a lot of good players at the time coming through Fergus, and like I said, a lot of us grew up, even the older guys, when I was a freshman on the team. I played with Thacker, Jensen, all those guys, at the outdoor rink growing up. So, I still one of the younger players in the first 2 years there. I still played with a lot of them in various, leagues and certain things. So, you always wanted to go to the state tournament. I really, wasn't sure we were going to go to 4 of them, but obviously pretty special time, for, Fergus Falls hockey and I'm happy I was a part of it, and then the younger guys, Ryan and Cantrud and all those guys, so I was lucky to be, kind of in the middle of some really good talent that was in front of me and also that was kind of behind me, so it was a really good stretch right there. And I think they went the next 3 or 4 years too with Ryan and that group. So, we feel pretty fortunate to be able to play on those teams. You grow up playing hockey, just watching the state tournament on TV and, pretending you're sick for that week so you can stay home and from school and watch every single game. And, to hopefully, be able to play in at least one, was our hope. And, to get 4 in it was pretty awesome. So I really look back. That was a great time. We still talk about it when we get together, when we're, able to see one another, these stories still come up. So, have that forever, which is fun.
You hear it all levels. It's hard to get to the state tournament or to the World Series or to the Super Bowl, but it's even harder to repeat.
Yeah.
So here you repeated, and then you three-peated, and look, we're going to 4-peat too here the next year. And you lost some key pieces from that third-place team and had some holes to fill, but they were able to come together as a team. Was it a work in progress throughout that whole season to get that section title?
It was, and it was interesting because everybody said after 98, 99, well, the Otters are done. They've had their run. They're going to be done. Well, that personality of this coach right here doesn't sit very well with me, and it took us a while to find our groove because we had such skill. I was reflecting on my drive here this morning. We were playing St. Cloud Apollo in 1998-99, and there was a Harrington kid that was a defenseman for them, and Craig Dahl was the coach for St. Cloud State, and he was there recruiting the Harrington kid. And Rob Meister come down, walked right around Harrington, dropped the puck between his skates, grabbed it and shot it in the top corner. And Craig came and saw me after the game and he said, "Who's that number 7?" I said, "I've been telling you about him all year." And so we had that skill level. And it's not that the 99-2000 team didn't have skill, they just didn't have that level of skill. So we had to really adjust how we played. And as a coach, I always felt you take what you're given, you mold your team to play in the style that will fit them. When the year before, we did a lot of quick breaks. We made a lot of long outlet passes. We couldn't do that again. And so it took the boys a little while to figure out where that was at. But again, when it came time for that section tournament, and we talked, every year I coach, we talked about the season is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And the lessons you learn along the way are designed to get you to be prepared for that section tournament. And when the time came, they were ready to play, and we got right after it.
Yeah, and that year helped those kids mature and grow in their skills and in their confidence in each other. And it led to another outstanding season, another trip to state, and a fourth place finish the next season.
Yeah, so we had some kids that came back. So we went down there and in 2000, and we played a really good Breck team, and they were state champions that year. I think every time we lost to a team in either the quarters or the semis, they either won the state championship or they finished in second place. I think the 98 we lost to Hermantown, and I think they finished in second place. Otherwise, we lost to the state champion every single year, which I think speaks to that, no need to hang your head when you've lost if you're losing to the state champion, right? And so in 99, 2000, we went down there and we lost two really tight games, but we grew in experience. There was a lot of kids that were coming back for that team. So when we played in 2000, 2001, it was a thrilling section final, if my memory serves me correct. We beat Detroit Lakes in overtime, and Ryan Miller, and what a fantastic hockey player he was. But we had to learn in 2000, 2001 about how to play, to take the emotion that we had and channel it better. We started off the year, I think we were averaging 12, 13 penalties a game. And you can't be successful doing that. And so we made some adjustments, and we had some conversations and got things going in the right direction. And that was a really, really fun year. And beating DL in the section final and overtime was great. And then went down to the state tournament and had a good run there. But again, it was one of those things that some of those kids who were coming back they weren't fulfilled with that fourth place finish, which, again, that burr under your saddle, there's something positive about that.
Yeah, it was Ben Nill that beat you again there.
Yes,
that
yes.
Semifinal.
Yes.
But again, that fueled the fire, and you were back for a sixth straight year for the 01-02 season.
Yeah. We started that year 0-2, and we lost games, not like by one goal or two goals. We just had two games where we were 4 or 5 goals we lost by. And I remember sitting down with the kids and just saying, look, at the end of the day, if we want to keep playing like we are, we'll have a 500 year. It'll be a struggle for us. Or we can choose to play the system. And Ryan Miller was our captain. He stood up and he said, I'm tired of losing. We're playing the system. And from that point forward, we just played phenomenally. We used our skill. We played a system that allowed us to be successful. And the thing that I remember from that year is we had a 5-day stretch where we beat Fargo South in Fargo on a Friday night, and they were North Dakota State champs that year. Went up to Roseau on Saturday, beat them 6-1. First time we'd beat them since 1986. Here it is 2024. I can still remember that like it was yesterday, right? And then on Tuesday, went to Moorhead and played them and beat them 2-1. And I think that was the year that they finished in runner-up. I think they lost to Elk River in the state championship. And did we have some kids who had some skill? Absolutely we did. Ryan Miller, Ryan Cantrud, defenseman Ben Larson, just really good kids that played really hard, right? And but they played the system, and that allowed us to be successful. We got to that section championship, playing Little Falls again, and we were actually down 2-0 after 2 periods. And I remember telling the boys before we went out on the ice that the good teams, which you guys are, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't panic. Just keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to win this game. And sure enough, we won 3-2, and that was a thrilling game for us, and really set the stage for us to go into the state tournament that year with coming back with that win to beat Little Falls.
And a good win in the opening round of the state tournament. So again, you're going to play 3 games down there.
And you want to play 3 games, but you really want to play 3 games at the X. Yeah. And you got to win that first game to do that. And for me, it was particularly satisfying because it was my alma mater. So we beat International Falls, and they were picked to win it that year. And again, just a little bit of a burr under our saddle. A very interesting story. They they had a first line that was really good. All three of their first line, one played for the Gophers and two played, one played for Brown and the other one was a Division III hockey player. But Tim Berglund and I was my assistant coach. We went and watched them play in their section final, and we knew that one of their players was the one that we had to watch. So I told Ryan Cantrud, I said, your job is to shadow this. We called it a left wing lock, and I said, wherever he goes, you go. And we just shut them down, and we wound up beating them 6-4. Well, that young man's dad was a UPS driver, and my dad had businesses, and so all the time the driver for the UPS would talk with my dad every day, and after that state tournament, he would talk to my dad. And finally, my dad said, "What's going on here?" He said, "Your son cheated." "How did he cheat?" "Well, he wouldn't let my son play hockey." My dad said, "That's called coaching. That's what you do, right?" And I told my dad told me that story. I said, "Hey, you go back and you tell him the reason why we did that is because we felt he was the best player on the ice, and we needed to do that." And after my dad told him that, they started talking again. So it worked out pretty good. But that was a very satisfying win for us. I think it was 6-4, and the Gordon kid got a hat trick. And the reason I remember that is I knew his dad was the coach for International Falls, and Kevin and I go back a long ways, and he was a couple years older than me growing up. But so it was a nice win for us. And then we played Totino the next day, and that's the game. 14 years of coaching, that's the one game that still haunts me. And what haunts me is that our kids did everything right. We played hard, we played the body. We hit the post in that game 6 times, Craig. One with 9 seconds left. And it's the only time in my coaching career that I walked into a locker room after a game and I had to turn around and walk out because I saw the emotion on the boys' faces, and it just got to me, and I had to step out because I could just see how crushed they were with that loss to Totino. And after the game was over, and I finally did have a chance to talk to him, I walked out of the locker room, and I ran into Mark Lohr, who was the coach for Totino, and he came over and he gave me a hug, and he said, "Bergie," he said, "the only way that we won this game was on the scoreboard." He said, "You were hands down the best team." And he said, "I've been coaching for 25 years, Brad." And he said, "I've never seen a team do to us what you guys did." And consolation, praise, fine, but just not what we were looking for. Because I had a belief that year that we were going to be state champions. We had everything that we needed. Tyler was playing well in the net for us. Our defensemen were really understanding what they needed to do. Ryan Miller had taken the team and put him on his back, and he said, "We're going." And we had kids like Dan Bolstead and Dustin Wynn and Scott Anderson. They didn't play a lot, but they knew what their role was, and they knew what they needed to do to help the team be successful. And that was probably the toughest game for me to think about, because I really felt that was our tournament to win, and losing that game was hard.
I can tell all these years later it still is to reminisce about that, and that had to be even harder to bounce back in that consolation final than it was when you did take third place, because when you're that close and didn't realize getting to that championship game, to get it together the next day had to be difficult.
I tried. I did my very best to get them, but I remember Jarvis Glass, who I just love Jarvie, and I looked at him as we're getting ready to go out on the ice for the start of the game, and I said, "Jarvis, this is going to be your last game, and I need you to get your head from where it's been to be in the moment here." He looked at me and said, "Coach, I'll do my best, but I make no promises." And we just couldn't get it together, and it was just the raw emotion of all of it. The other interesting thing is when you get a trophy for 4th place, and I watched the video afterwards, and when our captains went to pick it up, Ryan Miller never touched that trophy. He refused to touch it. He was so mad that we weren't playing in that state championship. But it was, for me, then as I look back and knowing it was my last year coaching, I could not have ended on a better note. My first year here in Fergus was such a fun trip as well. I mean, and all those teams in between were great too, but that to end with that 2001-2002 team was really puts a smile on my face, and I feel like that was a year for us and for that group of boys that hopefully they'll never forget, because I know I haven't.
Following the 6-year run of Coach Brad Bergstrom, which resulted in 6 state tournament appearances, his assistant coach Tim Berglund took over for 2 years. The Otters went 12-15 in Berglund's first year and 8-15-1 in his second year. And then the team transitioned to the Mike Donahue era. It started in the 04-05 season, and it continues still 20 years later. We'll take a look at that 20-year run for Coach Donahue in Part 4 of our Otter Hockey History podcast. Thanks for checking in with us, and be sure to check in again for Part 4 and look back at Part 1 and Part 2 if you have not done that, as we continue to cover Otter Hockey history.